People come from all walks of life. They all have lives they lead. Any and all are welcome here to come and chat.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. If you live in Chilliwack or the surrounding area, odds are you've shopped at Minter Garden. Apparently, its doors first opened in 1980. That's before I was here. Anyway, I am pleased to announce that my guest today is the person who opened those doors, Mr. Brian Minter. Welcome to the show.
Nancy, what a pleasure to be here.
So you're going to talk about fall planting, right?
Well, I think there's several things that have happened, Nancy. One is the pandemic has changed a lot of people's, outlook and the things they would like to do. We, for a long time, were kind of restricted to our home areas, and people really wanted to make their home more beautiful. That involved a lot of things like indoor renovations, yard renovations, but the big one really right across the world, not just Chilliwack and North America, is the fact that they wanted to make their garden more beautiful. And Nancy, all the data over the past few years has indicated that the people who connect with plants, and the millennials, quite frankly, give them a lot of credit, have driven this whole issue of a closer connection to nature.
Nice.
And essentially understanding that there's a relationship. Something, if you didn't know this, it's really quite important. The World Health Organization has for a long time right now promoted communities, particularly the Green City movement, and where people in over 50% of the world's population live in urban areas right now, to create parks. And within a 5-minute walk, there should be about a half acre, if you like, park. Within a 10-minute walk, a 2.5 acre to 5 acre park. And because of people getting out of the noise and the congestion and the sound barriers of a city, even in going to a park, the socialization makes a huge difference. People are more inclined to say hi to someone and greet each other. The fact that every culture and every age group reacts differently in these environments. And most of all, and the Japanese scientists have kind of isolated this whole issue, is that when you go into a forest, say a 2-day walk, 2 8-hour walks into a forest, plants, trees, and shrubs in the surround give out an aromatic phyton side. And this phyton side does two things to us. And it's not jogging through the forest, it's actually walking, listening, looking at the trees and everything, all the surroundings. It works on our immune system. It increases the ability of our immune system to be effective by 46%.
Wow.
And all the disease-fighting white blood cells increase by 53%. And this effect can last up to 3 months. And so, in other words, we have a connection to nature that we're in terms of, and that's what people are now beginning to realize. And the millennials give them a lot of credit, are driving this whole issue. So that means bringing a lot of plants indoors. And, just the sense of well-being, the sense of happiness, the sense of nurturing, making sure that they, know how to look to care for plants. And then outside right now, it's not just making it beautiful, Nancy, it's really about food gardening. And it's not vegetable gardening, it's food gardening. That means fruit trees, small fruits. It means, certainly vegetables, and being creative in how you do that. Some of the best lettuce patches are now eaves troughs put along the side of your house because they don't have a lot of room. And instead of a traditional tree, we're fanning them out, an espalier, as you call that. So this fence between ourselves and our neighbor is a fruit production area. And so I'm being really creative about these types of things and as much as we are living in more highly density areas, we do need a little bit of privacy. I want to sit out in my balcony. I don't want to see everybody seeing me. And so the advent of columnar, narrow-growing trees and plants on my patio or, between neighbors and so on, that's being a big thing. So creating this little grotto that, the secret garden, if you will, or place where I can get away. You can be who you are and you really are. It brings it out. So this is the bigger picture in terms of what we're talking about. So it's not just, I'm going to grab a plant here. So it's creating a lifestyle in your garden. And I love the fact that, when you go to Eastern Canada at this time of year, and even before Thanksgiving, almost every home has a front step with pumpkins and gourds and hay bales and corn stalks and so on. And we don't do that in the West, but that's been changing right now. And I love the younger generation who are, and of course, on social media in a huge way, showing their ideas and their creativity.
Right.
Orange pumpkins, I'm sorry, are out. It's about white pumpkins. And it's about cool and different types of things, creating a beautiful, sophisticated display. And not only on the outside, they bring it indoors as well.
Right.
And so in terms of the flowers they would have on the table, a lot of it is local. Some of the carnations have given way to dahlias, and we have an amazing array of, in British Columbia here, of local growers who produce virtually everything. So so this is kind of the beginning. It's about a lifestyle. It's about having the warmth and color of plants. And Nancy, the reason I'm so glad we had a chance to talk today, one of the issues is as the days become shorter, the daylight disappears. When we have cloudy, poor weather, as in today, it's Friday, and all weekend long and through into Monday, it's supposed to be rainy.
Right.
Our plants indoors, it's indoors. Why would it matter? It matters greatly. They tend to lack a lot of light. They're not able to pick up light. And every time we turn the heat up in our homes, the humidity disappears. So they're not getting the proper light, they're not getting humidity, and they start going backwards. And so one thing I wanted to share is when you are picking up plants or having plants this time of year, try and choose plants that are very tolerant of lower light conditions, because they will, do okay and thrive better.
Mm-hmm.
And little things about having in your home, take the plants you do have, make sure the curtains are open longer so you're allowing more light into your home and brighter light if you possibly can. And it's not a sunny window necessarily, any window you have. East or north is often very good for that. Moving them closer to the windows will help with that light situation. And the more important issue is getting grow lights. You can get very inexpensive ones today. You can also get expensive LEDs to use less power. But for 16 hours a day, getting light over your plants will actually change them from kind of going backwards to going ahead and thriving. And so these little tricks, and of course, if you can notch your temperature down a wee bit, I'm not going to crank it up to Fahrenheit 70 degrees. If you can keep it in your 60s somewhere, you'll find the humidity is much better. And the enemy inside our homes right now are fireplaces. Okay.
Right.
Yes, they keep us nice and warm, but gosh, do they draw humidity. So keep your plants closer to windows and away from fireplaces if you possibly can. And you'll just sort of sneak them through. And one little thing, everybody says, I've got this plant. It's really root bound. I want to put it in a bigger pot. Well, that's a certain death at this time of year. No repotting until we get back into the longer days, probably late April, and then it's okay to shift them up. The plants loved being root bound in a small container. And so those are just some of the things that looking after, making sure the energy you're putting into having these plants, they're going to stand up and do really well for you.
So what would you do like an aloe vera? Is that the same? Would you treat it the same way?
But you hit the nail on the head. It's not only aloe veras, it's all the succulent plants. And Nancy, the range of succulent plants that people have today, and particularly the hanging ones, not only the string of pearls, but the string of dolphins, little plants that look like each little leaf is a little dolphin,
Right.
String of hearts, and so on. That is blowing everything else out of the water. They need to be near a window. They got to be in a right window. As your aloe vera, they're a succulent type plant. And the one thing I find that a lot of people was, oh, I don't need to water it. It's a cactus. It's a succulent. Not true. I have the good fortune of teaching master gardeners at BC, and I explain to them that when you have a cactus, already it's in a small pot. Already it's got incredibly well-drained soil. So now if we're not going to water it, the plant does get under stress. And aloe veras are probably one of the best ones. They go sort of a brown color.
Mm-hmm.
They really good drink when you water them, and not cold water, please. I mean, we don't get up in the morning and have a cold shower.
Right.
Maybe you, but I just don't want to. But what we want, room temperature is the water that should go on. And when you water, really, really water well, because the root bound, the water goes through. And if you keep plants too wet, the oxygen, the natural process of watering, where the water goes in, it pushes the oxygen out of the soil. And if you keep it wet all the time, there's no oxygen. The roots can't breathe, they get into trouble. So good water, and then let them dry it well between waterings. That seems sort of the secret. And everyone knows when people say, I'm just have a brown thumb, I'm not good with plants.
Yeah.
First thing I do, and I love this with young people in particular, I put a plant in the hand. Does that plant need water? For a question. And if it's a couple, they never are, getting agree on anything anyway. But usually they do, because when you pick it up, it's light. If it's light, it needs a good drink. If it's heavy, I'll put it back. And so those are little tips that I think can make a big difference in terms of keeping your plants well, and especially the succulents and the aloe veras.
I have a quick question about something like, I live in a condo and we put in a little garden. We still have some plants in the ground, some sweet potato. Like, are they going to rot with all this rain, or should I dig them out? Like, what should we do?
Yeah, good question. As we're coming into this part of that, once the soil starts to get wet and stays wet, many of our root crops really must come out.
Okay.
I would say, and that's why when we talk about gardening in the spring, a raised bed if we can, so you keep your water levels, down low, and the water gets through, and then you can leave your carrots and your beets and turnips and those types of things you want in your garden. They can stay until we get severe frost. They're fine. But things like sweet potatoes, they have to come in right now.
Okay.
And that's awfully important to get them out and then get them to dry thoroughly, so we have them. And you bring an interesting point up here. Most people would just put the sweet potatoes somewhere in a dark room and let them be. You don't do that. You take an egg carton and you put them straight up and down in an egg carton, and you keep them as close as you can in Fahrenheit, about 60 degrees, about 70 degrees in the dark. When that happens, in that circumstance, the starch in a sweet potato begins to turn to sugar. And hence, after a period of time, it becomes sweet. And there's your sweet potato.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It is. There's so many things like that in the world that people don't know, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing is, like, we also planted some Brussels sprouts, and they're so tiny right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's normal for this time of the year. Did we plant
Nancy,
them?
why are you picking on the things that are the biggest problem? Seriously, and
Sorry.
that's great. That's great. With Brussels sprouts, if Mom didn't tell you, timing in life is everything.
Okay.
They have to go in by the end of June, or at the very latest, the early part of July,
Okay.
because they need time for the sprouts to be able to develop large enough so we can actually enjoy them. They should almost be the size of a big marble right now, at the very least. If they're the size of a pea, I don't think, because we're losing our warmth in our growing conditions, they're not going to size up. So end of June, early July for Brussels sprouts, and don't buy the cheap seed. Buy your hybrid seeds. They will get you much more tasty, more flavorful, and larger sprouts every time.
Right. Okay. What do you think about people who have lawns? Like, I'm not for lawns.
Okay, well, let me. That's another very, very good question. I'm with the Garden Writers Association, and we try to get all the information and disseminate it around North America. And and I get a kick out of these things. People who don't want lawns now have green carpet all over the place. They don't have to mow. Nightmare. The ecological damage of creating those carpets and so on. Right. A couple of things. Lawns, an average size lawn, and they're smaller today, I appreciate that, produce enough oxygen to keep 4 people alive.
Oh.
All the pollution goes into the soil. And by the way, that soil, the grass roots, as trees do, will allow that pollution to get down into the turf, which is very, very important. The microorganisms that are captured in the grass and the roots are tremendous. It's a place for earthworms, which of course aerate and work the soil. Lawns are absolutely great. Where the problem with lawns comes in, and by the way, from a landscape perspective, the green, because we have so much cement around today, the green is a lovely contrast to other plants and cement. But the lawns really do, I think, a magnificent job. But the problem is, using chemical weed controls all the time, because that's a difficult ones, and a lot of those in British Columbia have been banned. So we basically have pretty much user-friendly controls today for that. The second thing, and the bigger one probably, is today the old-fashioned two-cycle engine polluting the environment. And we're getting better at that. They're being more efficient today. Electric ones are now out there, and for those with very small lawns, best exercise in the world is pushing one of those.
Sure.
So from a lawn perspective, it's great, and it's such a healthy thing. And here's an interesting fact is, and I work with a lot of the researchers in terms of new things coming up, and all the parks boards throughout British Columbia have great relationships with them when we talk and we learn. But micro clover now is being put on our lawns right now, and from a pollinator perspective, to young people, it is so incredibly important to have them around your home. Is having lawns have been classified kind of a dead zone. It's not true, but that's a situation. Now, by spreading either white Dutch clover, and micro clover is just a sub offshoot of white Dutch clover. It goes in amongst your lawn seeds. Clover, if you use it correctly, creates its own nitrogen in the soil.
Right.
So if you have a lot of clover, you don't have to feed it. It's actually fixing nitrogen in your soil, which is really quite important. Second thing is it infiltrates everywhere. So in other words, clover doesn't look bad. Microclover, a mowed type microclover area, looks actually very, very beautiful. What does clover do? It flowers.
Right.
The clover flowers are just a magnet, both for pollen and for nectar for all the bees. I don't know if you did this when you were kids, but we always did. If you take a big ripe clover flower, and they used to suck the stems, actually the flowers, and it's sweet. It's quite wonderful to do that. So those are ways that we're making lawns far more user friendly, and they really are important. And I remember being on a bus with a bunch of garden writers who went, I'm not sure, it was Cincinnati or one of the cities in the States, and we went downtown. There was no lawns, there was no grass, it was all carpet. What a dead zone. That is a dead zone, right? No oxygen being formed.
Yeah.
And of course, cities are heat zones because the temperatures are 3 to 4 degrees higher in cities as opposed to the suburbs where you have more green. So there's the in defense of lawns. But if you do have a lawn right now, the biggest thing that people complain about is the moss.
Right.
And it's because we use heavy, wet soils, and the water sits. And when water sits over the wintertime, moss grows, it thrives. And you're keeping the fertilizer companies who sell moss control in business, and people do this. It's a cycle. And I always defer to golf courses, and locally in particular, the playing fields where all our kids play, and grandkids play soccer. And they plant in 1 foot of pure sand. And so because when it rains out there, pouring down rain, it's not soggy, it's good and firm. Right. And the second thing is because all through the year, they want to keep it that way, they're aerating all the time with the pulling out cores of the sand and grass mix, right, and putting more sand down. And that gives you, do they have a moss? No, because it's so well drained, no moss appears. Do they have weeds? No, because the grass is so thick and nice. So it's aerating your lawn, and sanding will really improve the moss situation. Okay. And it's nice, organic, and great exercise, by the way, again. The other thing is putting on lime this time of year. Lime now in organic gardening is so important because of the calcium. Plants really need lime, and keeping your pH right. So over the rainfall winters, the soil becomes more and more acidic. So in spring, I put fertilizer on, nothing grows. What's going on here? It's because the pH has become so low, it's become too acidic that the lawn grass go. And a lot of people say, what do I do? Go put some lime on. They put the lime on, the pH comes up and it starts to green up and so on. So lime, aerating this time of year, two of the really important things you should do, because keeping your lawn, and by the way, don't use the detacher because we have a lot, and this is by mowing well. When you mow, and this isn't just in winter, it's all year round. The science is there. You mow your lawn as short as you can, and you mow it in a different direction every time. And so that instead of the lawn grasses should go straight up like this, a lot of the time with long mowing, they lay down and you get this thatch forming. And it's just an absolute mess. And so just correct mowing in different directions every time will make a huge difference for you.
Fascinating.
That's
Well, I
probably more information you wanted, but
No,
so
no,
in defense of lawns. Okay.
It's all fascinating. I think we're out of time, but
Okay.
oh my goodness, I so appreciate you doing this. I'm just going to hold on for a minute and I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience. Okay.
Of course.
Thank you all for watching. I'm sure you learned a lot today from Brian Minter, who has so much information. And I believe he has, do you still do a newspaper page or?
I write for the Vancouver Sun. I do the CBC every week, and I write for the Chilliwack Progress as well. So no, it's just nice to share information, and it's nice to get so many comments and people say, "Gosh, I just learned something," and it's helping and sharing things that I think are really important.
Great. Okay, and thank you for watching, everybody. And until next time, peace out.
Okay.
Who are you?